Hello everybody and welcome back to another Blender tutorial. Today we're going to be making this result that I found from Neo Machina, although I've seen it from a bunch of other people as well. And you can see I've made it here in Blender. And a cool little thing, new tradition now, is we're going to have a looking glass render at every point. So I play this a little and it updates the hologram. And, you know, that's just the thing. This isn't a hologram tutorial, but just so you know that exists. Let's make this thing. This video is brought to you by Squarespace, the best place to build a beautiful website. So in geometry nodes, we're going to take this cube and make it a geonodes group. And I know I'm deleting the cube just to add a cube, but that's just the way it is. Now, the render that we're trying to make is basically a series of growing cubes that rotate based on some function, right? So if we take a cube and turn it into a curve, so this is just so I get the outline of it as if it's only the edges, and then I instance it a bunch of times. So I'm going to instance on points where this is the instance and we're making an arbitrary number of copies, then we can have this thing grow. So I'm going to make 15 copies of the cube, and we're going to have these copies grow relative to the index, which you can see automatically gives us this. So that it's contained inside the camera view, I'd recommend just dividing this by some like scaling factor. So maybe like 15 or that divided by 2. And you can see now we have all these cubes. Another thing we need to do is our camera for this effect to work needs to be oriented so that it's kind of like orthographic. So first of all, it's orthographic. And second of all, it needs to be oriented so these points are perfectly touching. So it kind of looks like there's a hexagon here. And I'm just going to make this a 1080 by 1080 render. And we're going to zoom this in. And I'm just going to, yeah, I feel like the positioning's fine. Okay, so we have the base of our effect. Now all we need to do is rotate these instances. Luckily, we have a node for that. So let's take the rotate instances node, which we can rotate on the z-axis. You can see that gives us our rotation. And just like before, this is going to be a function of the index. And you can see each one gives a random rotation, or a rotation relative to the index. If we make this on the z component, it's only going to be rotating on the z-axis, and we can control which one of these are rotated by a subtraction. So the way you want to think about this is it's calculating the distance between this number and each index value, and that is showing how much it's going to rotate. And it's rotating all together, right? It's kind of a linear thing. But if I was to do a bit of a cutoff, so I'm going to map range between 0 and let's say, how many points do we have? 15? 0 and 15. You can now see we're getting this effect where we're getting them to rotate in kind of like an order in some sense. I'm going to take linear and change it to smoother step just so we have a smoother interpolation. And you're going to see it rotates to the perfect position, but it starts off at an incorrect position. So what I would recommend is you increase this, the second handle, until it is in the correct spot. Now, is it pi over 2? It seems like it is, but it's a bit off. So I don't know if that just happens to be that. Either way, now we have a perfect rotation. Let's make this relative to a time function. So as we play this, I'm going to go to the timeline. As we play this, that is way too slow. I'm going to multiply this by 5. It's rotating. That's even way too slow, multiplied by 15. There we go. But it's starting a bit too early. So final thing we need to do is just add a bit of an initial subtraction by some amount. I'm sure there's a way to calculate what that amount should be. Let's see. Nope, that is way too much. So I just need to find the value where this thing is where it's supposed to be. Okay, that's almost it. You just want to find the value where it just starts rotating. In my case, it's 0.77, and you can see now we have the effect. All we need to do at this point to get it to loop is we see it takes roughly 40 frames to happen. So I'm going to go from 0 to 40, and now this timeline is going to be looping. And to give this thing actual geometry, I'm going to take the curve and convert it into a mesh. The nice thing about this is it's going to give it thickness, and it will also make each line the same thickness, right? So I'm going to bring down the radius, divide that by 5, and maybe even divide that by 2. So we get these nice thin lines that don't need to be a high resolution. And you can see that's how we made the render. But I'm not going to stop there. There's an extra trick. You could have, by the way, connected this to the x-axis, which is the same effect, just rotated this way, or you could have connected this to 2 axes, and then we get a much more complicated rotation. So there you go. Also, we could have done this by a full 180 degrees, and that's going to give it more chaos, just so you know. But that is the essence of the geometry nodes run. It's not that complicated, so hopefully you learned something. Thank you everybody for watching my tutorial, a tutorial sponsored by Squarespace. If you don't know what Squarespace is, it is the fastest and the easiest way to make a website. All you do is you take a template and you drag around blocks to construct your website, and my website, www.cgmatter.com, is made with Squarespace. 3 features you might want to know about Squarespace when you sign up is 1, you get access to analytics, so you can see who is going to your website, demographic type information. 2, you can embed social media feed, being like Twitter or whatever else, directly into your website, so you don't need to redirect. And 3, like I already said, the way you construct your website is very easily by moving around these blocks without any of the coding, although you can add code if you want to. So you can head over to Squarespace, use a free trial to kind of construct your website, and when you are ready to take that live, you can use my link in the description to save 10% on your first purchase of a website or domain.